Hey, I like to give a review, especially on these multi-scenario games of the game itself. I know I probably cover some of it, especially early on, but first, the simple disclaimer. Turns out it is what it advertises and not so much what I was hoping for in a game. Uh, but it was still, with the GMT deal and taking it with the special 500 sale, um, it was not a horrible price to pay. And it's not a bad game. The biggest issue that I've had with it is the rulebook. This is indeed very much a system related closely to the old SPI quad games on this period and some other periods. They all played pretty much the same. You move up, you fight. There's some little pieces maybe to handle more 7 Years' War stuff. You've got your rigid zones of control, but you've also got some ability to stack and to move units in and out of the back lines. And you could actually do it in the front line too, at a penalty. But it sits in sort of a hybrid land because it's got that very simplistic system underneath, and then the extensions to it to try to give it a little bit more feel are very they don't flow as well with the system. So the old Quadra game systems always had a very, very clean presentation, and I think they aimed at a certain kind of gamer who wanted to play, do their outflank, and not really worry too much about too many differences in types of units. And your Napoleonic game plays out just like your 7 Years' War game, which plays out very much like World War II or whatever you have. With this, a definite effort's been made to try to give it some additional flavor. The problem is the rules are a little bit, well, no, they're more than a little bit. They're very difficult, at least for me. And I've seen other people on the boards mention how hard they are. For something that's holding such a close relationship to those old Quadra games, there's 24 pages of rules. There's a couple pages of advanced rules. Yeah, they're kind of bigger print than SPI did, but they used to put one of these out with 6 to 8 pages of rules. And then you got the scenario book, which is also kind of obtuse, but at least it feels to me like it covers. You couldn't thin this out too much, but there are places where it's a little confusing. And the scenarios don't take a lot of space, but then there's the detailed example of play. Some people love these, some people don't. I'm one of the people who gets almost nothing out of them. So if the rules don't do it, trying to look through one of these to figure out what they actually mean is very hard on me. But for people who like that, it may make the rules much more accessible. Components themselves. Your standard fare in terms of the maps. You got your double-sided GMT maps, nice stuff. But a lot of the map space in each game is taken up by charts and tables. And that's painful, especially when they're just bookkeeping charts. The morale track especially. Morale's an important aspect of the game. But do I really need to spend that much space on it? And do I need to keep every dead unit on the track? Is that really an efficient use of the space for the game? Because with these games, especially with the hidden movement rule, it would be a huge bonus to have more map to wander around on. I found too many of the scenarios way too cluttered, not cluttered, but clustered, to really take advantage of the hidden movement. And the hidden movement rule, I think, is a gem. It's right at that perfect level where you can look like you're doing something with these hidden wings, but it doesn't require a lot of bookkeeping, it doesn't require writing, it doesn't require all kind of off-map boxes. It's a nice little thing. The rules for it are not too bad, actually, even though that's kind of a new aspect for me. Counters, nice big counters, meaty. Problems with them, they're slick, and they're stacking. They're big. They fill the hexes. What this meant is even with my good buddies the tweezers or with my little fingers, I was constantly knocking stacks over. The big counters in a couple of the scenarios and a couple of the areas of the map cover up most of the hex, so you can't see the terrain very well. Always a problem. One other little problem with the counters is the color scheme. These are made, these are wonderful counters for someone who's facing what I'm going to be facing soon, which is, some eyesight problems that are going to make it harder to play. Nice big counters are helpful for that, but the color scheme on the wings, some of them are difficult to discern from each other. Minor point, yeah, but lots of excess counters with the combat success counters, but you end up being able to use them on the morale track, so that's cool. Nice player aid chart. No real grumps on this, except for it looks like it was translated over from the other system. Verbatim, which means there's like notes about rivers that aren't in any of the game, and big rivers that there's no notes about them being impassable. The battle scenario setup, missing some units on at least one scenario. I stopped using it after that. Overall, though, what I would say, the game flows and plays pretty easily once you get into it, once you understand the rules. And I'm still not sure I completely understand the Cav rules. They're not that complex. They're just not clearly explained, like what, or I missed it, one or the other. But I've never had this much trouble with this simple game's rules, put out by a reputable company. There are certainly places where I'm still kind of fuzzy on the rules. But if I could explain these rules to someone in 10 minutes, 15 minutes probably. So it's not a tough game. And once you start playing it, the mechanics, there's a lot of playing with counters, etc. The fiddly stuff that people have informed me about in a way that I don't even like. But, so for example, you move artillery, you put an artillery moved counter on it. It looks like every unit has its own morale state counter because position and stack and, whether you're disordered or routed or whatever, these things are all variants, and I kind of cheat by tilting counters and stuff. The slippery counters, big problem when you start having stacks, and I was having trouble gripping with my tweezers, and my fingers would stumble into the units. Overall, though, I think somebody who likes the Quadra games and can get over the kind of finicky little things with the counters would enjoy this. If one of the big problems is, and not with this game, but in general with the hobby, there's not a lot of board games on the tactical level of the 7 Years' War. Not that I'm aware of, at least. So I don't know of any that are at the level I like. I've played minis games that are at that level, but it's generally a fairly forgotten period. All right, I'm going to let this one go. Hopefully you guys get something out of it. The first video shows me much more grumpy about the game. gonna give it about the same